Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is Saint Dragon for the NEC PC Engine. In this 1990 shoot-'em-up from ACOM, an evil cyborg invasion is headed for the planet of the Golden Dragon. So who better to stop him than another cyborg, who's also another dragon. But fear not, we know he's a good guy because we call him Saint Dragon. I think beatifying mythical creatures might be against the rules, but I'm sure God loves mechanical fantasy beasts too. Especially when they're as cool as our slithery hero. He's got no wings, which makes him look more like a snake dragon than a saint dragon, but he can still fly, and his trailing chain link tail is actually your secret weapon in this game, because it blocks bullets and damages any enemy it comes in contact with. That's right, only your head is vulnerable, so feel free to whip that tail around and curl up like an armadillo whenever things get a little dicey. And they certainly will get a little dicey. Our canonized robo-dragon has to fight his way through 6 levels. A volcanic forest full of jumpin', jewel-encrusted jaguars and a huge fire-breathing bull who still fights back after you blow up his noggin. A psychedelic sorta insect nest that tosses veiny pods at you from all directions. A factory appropriately populated by mechs with rocket packs and missile launchers. A sparkly purple nebula plagued by space machine traffic jams. A massive warship city that you circumnavigate as the level progresses. And finally, the planet of the Golden Dragon. You don't actually face off against the Golden Dragon here, it's just sorta the set dressing for the level, but that's not to say this game doesn't have its fair share of cool boss battles. I like how several of them seem to be re-engineered fights against the same mystical pendant-looking thing that sometimes shoots lasers from a metal shell, sometimes attacks from within a massive fortress spacecraft, and sometimes clones itself to chase you around the screen. If I could clone myself, I'd use the doubles to run all my weekend errands at the same time, but you do you, Mystic Pendant. The standalone bosses are the real stars of the show though, especially the humanoid cyborg, who breaks out of a purple test tube to burn you with grid-pattern fireballs. He even turns into a skeleton with robot bugs swarming out of his ribcage, which is the best kind of horrific. You've got plenty of heavy artillery to fight back though. Saint Dragon can snag upgrades for speed boosts, temporary invincibility, bonus lives, and special weapons. The flamethrower only goes forward, but is super potent, and on brand for a dragon, for what that's worth. The laser orbs cut through the environment, guided rings fire in whatever direction you last moved, and bouncy blasts are, bouncy. Those are my favorite, because sometimes you can just sit there in the middle of the screen and let them pinball everything to smithereens. And the best part is that you don't lose any of these upgrades when you collect spreadshot items, or even when you die, in which case they only get knocked down 1 power level. This makes Saint Dragon a really approachable game, especially when you factor in the unlimited continues and generous mid-stage checkpoints. I was able to beat the whole thing without too much trouble, but only as long as I used turbo fire. A lot of the enemies here are bullet sponges, so just hammering the action button alone wouldn't have cut it. The biggest saving grace is the unique tail shielding mechanic though. I feel like I even exploited it beyond the intention of the game designers, since I basically coasted through the entire final stage by curling myself into a ball in the corner of the screen. And this method even works on the final boss. I caught myself literally chuckling at how blatantly I cheesed this dude. Can't touch me, I'm an armadillo. The graphics in Saint Dragon are pretty unique, in that they don't ever lean too heavily into standard shoot-'em-up design tropes. Everything has this trippy flavor to it that keeps each new level exciting to discover. I was particularly taken with the Purple Nebula stage. When they say people on their deathbed see the light, I can only imagine it looks something like this. Probably without all the robots though. And the game over screen is a pretty gruesome depiction of poor old Saint Dragon on his deathbed. He's just lying there bleeding out under a cold, shameless spotlight. Brutal. The audio in this game is also kind of brutal too. Not in the heavy metal sense, but in the I can't hear anything over the blaster noise sense. It's just a constant, relentless I mean, I'm sure there's music in here somewhere, I just can't discern a whole lot of it. But maybe that's my fault for using turbo fire, so who am I to complain? And other than that, I love everything about Saint Dragon. From the generous checkpoint and continue system, to the novel tail shield mechanic, to the power-up scheme and the psychedelic biomechanical enemy and stage designs. Overall, I was hoping for a fun game out of Saint Dragon, but what I got was far beyond my expectations in all the best ways. As sacrilegious as it may sound, our slithery buddy certainly deserves his canonization as far as I'm concerned, and the forces of evil definitely can't touch him as long as he can still fly around in full-on armadillo mode.